Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going into a really dark chapter of San Francisco's history, the early 1970s.
It's a time many remember for, the counterculture, the progressive spirit.
Exactly. But that image was shattered by this wave of terror that just gripped the city.
Absolutely. Between October 73 and April 74, the whole vibe changed. That summer of love feeling. Gone. Replaced by fear.
People were genuinely scared to walk the streets, especially at night. It felt like the city was under siege.
Just this constant dread of random, racially motivated attacks. And they became known by this really unsettling name.
The zebra murders.
Yeah. And the name itself, it's kind of strange, right? It sounds mysterious, but the origin is actually pretty mundane.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
It came from police radio code. Zebra was the Z-band frequency they used for this special task force investigating these crimes.
Wow. So just an internal police thing that became the public name for this horror?
Pretty much. It shows how quickly something technical can take on this really sinister meaning in the public eye.
That's definitely one of those details that sticks with you. So our mission today in this deep dive is to really unpack this whole terrifying saga using the sources we've looked at.
Right. We want to go through the timeline, look at these awful events, the police investigation, which was hugely controversial.
And the trial, too.
Yeah.
That was dramatic. Plus, all the questions that still kind of linger even now, decades later.
We're not just looking at the what happened, but the impact, on society, the human stories behind it all.
And we'll pull out some of those incredible, almost unbelievable details from the investigation of the trial that make this case so compelling and honestly so disturbing.
It really pushes you to think about fear, justice, civil liberties, where those lines are drawn. It's going to be intense.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. October 20th, 1973. An act of just pure horror that set the tone.
Richard Hogg, he was 30, and his wife Quinta, 28. Just walking down the street, normal evening.
And suddenly, they're accosted at gunpoint by two black men.
Forced into a beige Dodge van. It's just a nightmare scenario.
Inside, they robbed them, beat Richard unconscious.
And it wasn't just a robbery. They drove them to this isolated industrial area.
And there, Quinta Hogg was murdered. Brutally. With a machete.
Unspeakable violence. Then they turned on Richard, tried to kill him the same way. They clearly intended to leave no witnesses.
It's hard to even comprehend, but Richard, somehow, he survived.
It's almost miraculous. He had these horrific cleaver wounds, head, neck, lost so much blood. But he regained consciousness.
Managed to crawl away, find help. Just incredible willpower.
And critically, he gave the police that first key description.
Two black men. Beige Dodge van.
That detail, the van, seemed small then, but it became huge later on, the first thread.
Okay, so that was a horrific start.
Mm-hmm.
But then the pattern started to emerge, tied to a specific weapon.
Yes, and this is really crucial early on. The consistency of this 1.32 caliber pistol across several attacks, even when witness descriptions varied, it screamed coordination, not randomness.
So after the Hoggs, when did the gun first appear?
November 25th, 1973. About a month later, Salim Erekat, a 52-year-old grocer, shot in the head in his store.
Robbery again.
Yes, robbed. And investigators found the .32 caliber bullet, a casing, and this blanket with holes in it.
They thought it was used as a silencer.
Yeah, to muffle the shot.
Sure.
They also found a palm print on the door handle, and later his wallet and cards were found ditched in an alley.
Okay, so one attack with the .32, then what?
It escalated quickly. December 11th, Paul Danzig, 26 years old, shot 3 times in the back near a phone booth.
This is...
3 saw 2 young African-American men flee, but their descriptions were all over the place. Tall, thin, short, stocky. Police weren't sure what to make of it initially.
But the ballistics, that must have been the key.
Exactly. The .32 bullet and casings matched Erekat's murder. Same gun, no doubt.
Suddenly it's connected, terrifyingly connected.
That match was absolutely pivotal. It cut through the confusing witness accounts. Then, just 2 days later, December 13th.
Arthur Agnos, the future mayor.
Right. Shot twice in the chest. Miraculously, he survived. This description, a young, medium-built African-American male.
And that same day, another attack.
Hours later, Marietta de Girolamo, 31, killed. 3 shots to the back. A witness saw an African-American man run off but couldn't give much detail.
Let me guess. The gun.
Same .32 caliber. Ballistics confirmed it linked Erekat, Danzig, Agnos, and de Girolamo. The signature was unmistakable.
It's like this one gun is just stalking the city, December 20th. More.
Yes. Ilario Bertuccio, 81 years old. Murdered. 4 shots.
Any witnesses?
An 18-year-old saw a young black man run to a white van driven by another African-American man, and they sped off. And again, the same .32 pistol.
And there was another attack that night, too.
Yeah, around 10 p.m., Teresa DiMartini, 21, attacked, shot 3 times, badly wounded, but survived.
What did she describe?
A young African-American man got out of a van, but she also mentioned an accomplice driving a Cadillac. That's an interesting detail.
The Cadillac connection.
And the gun.
Still the same .32. Found casings and a bullet in her car. It's relentless. And then just before Christmas, December 22nd.
A double murder. Just devastating. Neil Moynihan, only 19, and Mildred Hosler, 50. Killed within minutes of each other, just blocks apart.
Witnesses again described a young African-American man.
But again, conflicting details, frustrating for investigators, but the ballistics.
Still the same .32.
Still the same gun, used in every attack since Arakat. The consistency of the weapon versus the inconsistency of the descriptions was baffling and terrifying.
So what was the police doing? They had the gun link, the van description.
Well, they got a bit of a break, or maybe just good policing, right after Hosler's murder. About 10 minutes later,
What happened?
patrol officers spotted a beige Dodge van, like the one Richard Hogg described.
No way.
Yeah. They followed it, detained the driver when he parked. J.C. Simon, 27.
And
He said he worked for Black Self-Help Moving and Storage, an organization linked to the Nation of Islam.
did they find anything?
Not right then, nothing immediately incriminating in the van or on him, but that name, J.C. Simon and company, that would come back.
So, end of 73. One gun, a pattern of attacks on white victims, conflicting descriptions, and this potential loose link to Simon and that company.
Exactly. Public fear was definitely ramping up. Police were trying desperately to tie it all together, but the terror was about to shift gears.
Okay, this is where you said it gets really interesting. January 1974.
Yeah, January 28th, a date etched in San Francisco's memory, a mass murder event. 5 people attacked or killed in one night.
5. In one night.
Unbelievable brutality. Started around 7:30 p.m. Tana Smith, 25, shot twice in the back. 20 minutes later, a few blocks away, Vincent Wallen, 69, killed. Then around 9 p.m., John Bambick, 80, shot.
Just one after another.
And the brazenness was escalating. About 40 minutes after Bambick, Jane Hawley, 45, was murdered. Inside a laundromat.
Wait, inside. With people around.
15 witnesses present. The killer apparently just walked in, calmly singled her out, shot her twice in the back, and walked out. Didn't harm anyone else.
That's beyond chilling. The coldness of it.
Left everyone stunned. And then minutes later, nearby, Roxanne McMillian, 23, was attacked. Shot twice, survived, but was paralyzed.
The method sounds chillingly similar to the 73 attacks. The randomness, the targeting.
The MO was very similar. But here's the crucial difference, the twist that changed everything for the investigation.
Okay.
Ballistics showed a different .32 caliber pistol was used for all 5 attacks on January 28th.
A second gun.
A second gun, totally distinct from the one used in 1973.
Wow. So what did that imply? 2 killers. 2 groups.
That was the horrifying implication. Either the first group got a new gun, or, more frighteningly, there was a second, independent or collaborating group now active.
That just doubles the terror, doubles the complexity. How did the authorities even process that?
It was a massive challenge. Suddenly, they might be hunting 2 separate killing entities, and the witness descriptions for these January attacks
What were they saying?
often described a young, medium-built African-American man, sometimes wearing a coat and a wide-brimmed hat, and frequently fleeing in a specific car.
At the van.
No, a 1959 model Cadillac, recognizable by its large rear lights. Roxanne McMillian described her attacker differently, as taller, large-built, but other witnesses to her attack also mentioned that dark Cadillac.
So a new gun, maybe a new car associated with it. This is getting complicated.
Extremely. The city was absolutely terrified after that night. Mayor Alioto went public, acknowledged an organized group was targeting white victims.
And that's when Operation Zebra officially kicked off.
Yes, January 74. The Special Task Force was formed using that Z-band frequency. It became the largest police operation in the city's history up to that point.
Massive police presence.
Huge. Intensified patrols, detectives working nonstop. The city was just holding its breath.
Did it work? Did the attacks stop?
There was a lull. The increased presence seemed to have an effect, maybe pushed them underground for a bit, gave people a fragile hope.
But it doesn't last.
No. April 1st, 1974. Thomas Rainwater, 19, and Linda Story, 21, both Salvation Army members, attacked on the street.
What happened to them?
Rainwater was killed, shot twice in the back. Linda Story survived, also shot twice.
And the gun. Please don't say.
The second gun. The same .32 pistol from the January 28th attacks. The new wave was definitely still active.
Could Linda's story identify the attacker?
Only generally. Young, medium-built African-American. Nothing distinctive.
And it continued.
2 weeks later, April 14th, two teenagers at a bus stop. Ward Anderson, 18, and Terry White, 15. Both shot, both survived.
What did they see?
They described a large-built African-American man in a beige suit, and ballistics again confirmed it was the second .32 pistol.
And then just 2 days after that.
April 16th, Norman Shields, 23, killed in his car, shot at close range.
Witness.
Not to the shooting itself, but neighbors saw two young black men in a car parked near Shields' car about 15 minutes before. Couldn't ID the car, though.
And the gun.
Same .32 caliber pistol. The second gun. Used in all the attacks since January 28th. The pattern was undeniable.
So by mid-April 74, it's clear. 2 guns, 2 distinct phases of attacks, primarily targeting white people. The city must have been at a breaking point.
Absolutely. Fear was pervasive, and the pressure on the police and the mayor was immense, which led to, well, some very controversial actions.
This is the intensification of Operation Zebra, right? Where things got really heated.
Yeah, and ethically very murky. The media coverage was, frankly, fanning the flames of racial prejudice. There was even talk of a curfew for white residents.
The curfew for white people, that sounds backwards.
It shows the level of fear and confusion. And the police presence in black neighborhoods became overwhelming, leading to clashes, accusations of harassment.
So tensions were just sky high.
Extremely high. Mayor Alioto and the police were trying to manage the investigation and refute reports the city was descending into chaos. It was a powder keg.
And this is where that clash between public safety and civil liberties really comes into focus.
Precisely. On April 17th, after Norman Shields was killed, Police Chief Donald Scott made an unprecedented announcement.
Was it?
He basically gave officers special powers to stop, search, detain, even arrest any African-American male who vaguely matched the broad suspect descriptions.
Any African-American male?
Yeah.
Based on just a general description?
Effectively, yes. It was seen by many as giving police carte blanche to target black men based on race.
The backlash must have been immediate.
Fierce. In just 1 week, April 17th to 24th, police detained and interrogated over 600 young black men on the streets, often with no probable cause beyond their appearance.
600 in a week, that's staggering.
Civil rights groups like the ACLU and NAACP were outraged, condemned it as blatant racial discrimination, profiling, constitutional violations.
Were there reports of abuse?
Yes, reports of misconduct, harassment, racist acts, even injuries requiring hospital visits.
What did the city leaders say?
Robert Seale of the Black Panthers accused the administration of racism. Mayor Alioto defended it, saying the situation demanded extraordinary measures, that it was a civic duty for black residents to cooperate.
But the pressure must have been immense.
It was. By April 24th, the outcry forced the police to restrict the practice. Lawsuits were filed immediately against the SFPD.
And there were accusations about Alioto's motives, right? His campaign.
Yeah, lawyers tried to link it to his run for governor, suggesting political motivation. Chief Scott denied Alioto drafted the order, but it shows how politically charged everything became.
While all this controversy is swirling, a major break happens.
A really crucial discovery, totally unexpected, April 27th. Just days after the stop-and-search policy was reined in.
What was it?
2 8-year-old boys, just playing, found a gun hidden in some bushes.
Where?
On the same street where Norman Shields, the last victim, was killed. They found a .32 Beretta automatic pistol and 4 extra cartridges nearby, like they'd been carefully hidden.
The second ghost.
This was the smoking gun, literally. Forensic analysis confirmed, without any doubt, that this Beretta was the weapon used in all the attacks from January 28th onward. Tana Smith, Jan Hawley, Rainwater, Shields, all of them.
So this proved it wasn't the same gun as the 73 murders.
Absolutely. It definitively confirmed the earlier killings, Eretat, Danzig, Agnos, etc., were done with a different .32. So at least 2 guns, 2 distinct phases or groups.
Okay, let's unpack that. A game changer. Finding the actual weapon. But it also solidifies this idea of potentially multiple perpetrators, multiple phases. Still complicated.
Very complicated. It answered one question confirming the second weapon, but raised others about who these people were they connected, how. The picture was getting clearer, but also stranger.
And this discovery leads right into the next major turning point, the informant.
Right. The arrests and the emergence of this angels of death narrative. It happened fast, April 30th.
Mayor Alioto makes an announcement.
Yeah, big press conference. Alioto, running for governor, announces a major breakthrough thanks to a police informant.
Who is the informant?
Anthony Harris. He'd apparently met with the mayor for 5 hours, spilled everything, details of the crimes, named names.
And based on what Harris said,
Pre-dawn raids on May 1st. Police arrested 7 African-American men, all members of the Nation of Islam, all worked at Black Self-Help Moving and Storage.
including J.C. Simon, the guy stopped back in December.
Yes. Simon was arrested again, along with Larry Green, Manuel Moore, Douglas Burton, Clarence Jamerson, Douglas Stallings, and Thomas Manley.
But not all of them were charged.
No, within 2 days, Burton, Jamerson, Stallings, and Manley were released. Not enough evidence to hold them. But Simon, Green, and Moore were charged with murder and conspiracy. A huge step.
And then Anthony Harris's story comes out. This must have been explosive.
Absolutely sensational. Harris got immunity for testifying, and his story was shocking.
What did he claim?
He said the arrested men weren't just killers, they were part of this secret, violent cult within the Nation of Islam called the Angels of Death.
Angels of Death. What was their ideology, according to Harris?
Extreme black supremacy. He claimed the murders were initiation rites, acts to purify the black race and start a race war. Horrific stuff.
And Harris admitted his own involvement.
Yes, he admitted complicity in 10 murders, starting right back with Quinnahog in October 73. Put himself right in the middle of it, but safe due to the immunity deal.
How much of this Angels of Death story was actually corroborated? That sounds like something out of a movie.
That's the big question, right? It was a shocking narrative, grabbed headlines, but legally, you need more than just the word of an informant with an immunity deal.
Did the police back up the cult idea or the scale of it?
Mayor Alioto claimed they were responsible for maybe 70 murders across California since 1971, a huge number.
70?
But police officials were more cautious. They publicly questioned the evidence for crimes outside SF or for this widespread cult existing on that scale, a definite tension there between Alioto's claims and the police investigation.
And they confiscated the van.
Yes, the white Dodge van from Black Self-Help was seized, a direct link back to Richard Hogg's original description.
Then another person gets charged later.
Yeah, May 16th, Jesse Lee Cook, also a Nation of Islam, former Black Self-Help employee.
Was he involved in the main zebra attacks?
He was actually already in prison for murdering Francis Rose back in October 73. Used a .22 pistol for that, not the .32s.
So why link him to zebra?
It was controversial. Prosecutors decided Rose was the 15th zebra victim, even though the weapon didn't match the pattern. And there was another report about Cook.
What was that?
A woman, Linda Enger, said Cook had psychologically tormented her, threatened her life back in October 73, though he didn't physically attack her. Painted a picture of a disturbed individual.
Okay, so the arrests are made. Harris is telling this wild story. Cook is added. The stage is set for the trial.
Exactly. A trial that would try to piece together this incredibly complex, violent puzzle the whole city was watching.
So the trial begins March 3rd, 1975. Moore, Simon, Green, and Cook all plead not guilty.
And the prosecution's case hinges almost entirely on Anthony Harris, the informant with the immunity deal.
What was his core testimony? How did he connect everyone?
Harris claimed he met Cook and Moore in San Quentin prison early in 73. Said they talked about the Angels of Death, shared racist views against whites, planned murder methods, became friends.
So he's saying this started in prison.
According to him. After he got out, he said Larry Green helped him get the job at Black Self-Help. Cook and Moore started working there too after they were released later that year, all together at the moving company.
And Harris tied specific people to specific things.
Yeah, he said Green owned the beige Dodge van from the Hogg attack, said Manley, Jamerson, and Stallings owned the Cadillacs linked to the 74 attacks.
And who did he say was in charge?
He pointed the finger at J.C. Simon and Jesse Cook as the organizers, claimed they held secret meetings at Simon's apartment in fall 73, indoctrinated Moore and Green into the Angels of Death, got them eager to kill.
Did the defendants confirm any of this? The meetings?
Absolutely not. Denied it completely. Simon said Harris was never even in his apartment. And another witness for the prosecution,
Who was that?
Michael Armstrong, testified he sold 2.32 pistols to Thomas Manley and a .22 pistol to Jesse Cook in October 73, directly linking them to weapons.
Okay, so here's his testimony is complex, detailed. How did the prosecution try to back it up for specific crimes, like the Hogg murder?
For the Hoggs, Harris implicated himself, Cook, and Green. Said Green used the machete on Quinta, Cook attacked Richard. Richard Hogg did ID the van.
But could he ID Green as the attacker?
No. He couldn't positively ID Green. That was a gap. Green denied using the van that night anyway.
But there was that ring.
Huge piece of evidence. Harris's girlfriend, Carolyn Patton, had a ring Harris gave her the day after the murder. Richard Hogg ID'd it in court as Quiniz's stolen ring. Directly tied Harris to the crime scene loot. Very powerful.
What about Aracat, the grocer?
Harris blamed Simon, and someone named Eddie Land said he was just a lookout. But only Harris's palm print was found at the scene, no other witnesses. The court found his testimony there unconvincing, showed the limits of relying solely on him.
And Paul Danzig, shot near the phone booth.
Harris blamed Moore and Simon, using Manley's Cadillac. But the three witnesses couldn't ID Moore or Simon in court. Again, the eyewitness problem.
What about Agnes and DiGirolamo? The attacks on the same day.
Harris claimed he knew nothing about those. Agnos couldn't ID his shooter. A witness did ID Clarence Jamerson fleeing the DiGirolamo scene.
But Jamerson wasn't charged for that.
No, never charged for that specific murder, despite the witness ID. Shows how complex turning an ID into a conviction can be.
Petruccio and DiMartini. The December 20th attacks.
Harris blamed Simon and Moore. Witnesses said they matched the descriptions but couldn't be 100% sure in court. Looked like them isn't a positive ID.
And DiMartini, the survivor.
She had ID'd Moore from a photo earlier. That was significant evidence presented. But then, in court, face-to-face, she couldn't identify him. Eyewitness testimony can be fragile.
The double murder. Moynihan and Hosler on December 22nd.
Harris blamed Simon and Moore again. And interestingly, Simon and Moore had been stopped by police twice that night near the murder scenes. Circumstantial, but intriguing.
But could witnesses ID them in court for the murders?
No. Again, no positive court ID. So the prosecution relied on Harris and the circumstantial evidence of them being in the area.
Okay, let's dig into this. It seems Harris's testimony was detailed, but actual corroboration, especially solid witness IDs in court, was often shaky.
Was definitely shaky for many of the earlier crimes. The prosecution's case really leaned on Harris's narrative. But then came the defense's major counterargument, especially for those January 28th mass murders.
Right, the night of the laundromat killing. What was Harris's account there?
Harris said Simon and Moore did all 5 attacks that night using Manley's Cadillac. Specifically, Simon shot Tana Smith, Moore shot Jane Hawley in the laundromat.
Did the prosecution have better corroboration here?
Yes, actually. A witness did ID Simon for Smith's murder. And crucially, several witnesses positively identified Moore as the man who shot Jane Hawley in the laundromat. That was strong, given how many people saw it.
And a car.
Other witnesses, including Roxanne McMillian, the survivor, ID'd Manley's Cadillac as the getaway car, even if they couldn't ID the occupants. So the vehicle link was solid, too.
Okay, so that sounds stronger for the prosecution. But you mentioned a curveball.
A massive one, the alibi. Simon and Moore completely denied being with Harris or committing any crimes that night.
What did they claim?
They claimed they, along with Green, Jamelson, and Burton, were miles away at the Winterland Arena watching the live broadcast of the Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier fight, the Thrilla in Manila.
A huge public event. Were there witnesses?
Dozens of independent witnesses confirmed seeing them there, corroborated their story. They said they left Winterland just minutes before Jane Hawley was murdered across town.
And Jamerson drove them home.
That was their testimony, backed by witnesses. Clarence Jamerson drove them straight home. The defense argued it was physically impossible for them to have been at Winterland and then commit the laundromat murder minutes later.
Wow. That's a powerful alibi against multiple eyewitness IDs. What does that tell you?
It really throws the reliability of eyewitness testimony under stress into sharp relief, doesn't it? Especially when contrasted with a solid alibi backed by many people with a clear reason to remember that specific night and time. It highlights the immense difficulty in proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt when accounts diverge so drastically.
Were there other IDs? What about the later victims?
Linda Story, the Salvation Army survivor from April 1st, couldn't ID her attacker in court. But Ward Anderson and Terry White, the teens, shot at the bus stop on April 14th.
They ID'd someone.
Yes. Both identified Manuel Moore in court as the man who shot them. Another direct link for the prosecution against Moore.
So the trial was just this incredible clash of narratives. Harris's confession, partial IDs, the strong laundromat IDs, but then this seemingly airtight alibi. What a task for the jury.
An almost impossible task, weighing an informant's testimony against eyewitness accounts versus a mass corroborated alibi.
So after all that, what did the jury decide? How did they make sense of it?
On March 13th, 1976, they delivered the verdicts. Despite the contradictions, despite the alibi, they convicted.
Who was found guilty of what?
J.C. Simon, guilty of Tana Smith's murder and Roxanne McMillian's attack. Manuel Moore, guilty of Jane Hawley's murder, the attack on Anderson and White, and complicity in McMillian's attack.
And Green and Cook.
Larry Green and Jesse Lee Cook, guilty for the Hogg kidnapping, Richard Hogg's attack, and Quina Hogg's murder.
So the city had convictions, but for the men found guilty.
The fight wasn't over. On March 30th, 1976, all four got life sentences, but with parole eligibility after 7 years, which was standard then.
Did they appeal?
Moore appealed in 79, Cook in 83. Both appeals were rejected. Their convictions stood.
And they spent decades in prison. Did they ever change their stories?
Well, it's striking. Simon, Moore, and Green consistently maintained their innocence year after year, decade after decade. Jesse Cook was the exception. He did eventually admit guilt later in life.
But the others insisted they were wrongly convicted.
Absolutely. They kept filing for parole, but they were denied every single time. The severity of the crimes, and importantly, the protests from victims' families at the hearings, kept them locked up.
That persistence in claiming innocence, except for Cook, alongside the constant parole denials, it really highlights the complexity, doesn't it? The lasting pain versus the questions around the evidence, especially Harris.
Exactly. It underscores the enduring trauma for the families, but also the difficult questions about justice when the main witness is so compromised. Larry Green, for instance, denied parole 14 times, last time in 2019. He reportedly had a clean prison record for years.
Is he still incarcerated?
As of 2020, yes, he was still in prison in Solano County, an old man still proclaiming his innocence.
What happened to the others?
Time caught up with them inside. J.C. Simon died in San Quentin in 2015, aged 69. Spent nearly 41 years locked up, innocent to the end, he said.
And Moore.
Manuel Moore died in prison in 2017, also maintaining his innocence.
And Cook, the one who admitted guilt.
He was also repeatedly denied parole, despite his admission. His last denial pushed eligibility to 2025. But he got sick in early 2021, transferred to a medical facility, and died that July, aged 76.
So 3 died in prison maintaining innocence. 1 died admitting guilt. A very somber end to a terrifying saga.
It really is. The zebra murders remain this incredibly complex, disturbing chapter. It's not just about the horrific crimes, but about the investigation, the trial, the role of fear, race, and the justice system under pressure. It left a deep scar on San Francisco.
It truly is a stark reminder, isn't it? How fast fear can take over a city, and how complicated the path to justice can be. You've got eyewitness accounts, forensics, police choices that were hugely controversial, and this informant. It's a tangled mess.
And that alibi, the Ali Frazier fight, it just hangs there.
So it really makes you think. When a city is facing that kind of peril, where do you draw the line? How do you balance desperate measures for safety against basic civil liberties?
That's the fundamental tension, isn't it? And maybe the deeper question is, how does a community, a city, ever fully heal from wounds like that? When the fear was so real, the division so deep, and the questions about justice linger for so long.
It's a heavy thought to end on. Something that stays with you long after you hear the details.